Welcome to Flames of Freedom, Episode 5, Wandering, a docudrama based on actual historical events, brought to you by Lance Toland Entertainment. In the previous episode, Diogo and Gracia's son Andre had just confronted the ugly face of hatred toward the Jews of England. Diogo's ambivalence about how to address this issue with his son threatens to create a rift between himself and Gracia.
Andre?
Do you know what just happened?
What?
We are not allowed in the shop down the street. Did you know that? The shopkeeper called me a filthy Jew.
He did what?
He called me a filthy Jew and told me we weren't welcome.
Andre, you can't let people like this get to you. He's nothing but a foolish shopkeeper who doesn't know any better.
He doesn't know anything but to hate me. And he doesn't even know me. What have Jews ever done to him to deserve that?
Andre, we are guests in this country. We must be patient. Changing people's attitudes sometimes takes generations. Let us not forget that being a Jew in Portugal was reason enough for being burned at the stake. At least here in England, we can openly be Jews without the constant fear of death.
But if people hate us just because we're Jews, that's not freedom, Papa.
True, but it's early days, Andre. Not everyone feels this way toward us. Patience.
Patience. You told us that living in Portugal would be a good thing. It looks to me like we traded one devil for another.
My brother turned and slammed the door as he left.
Andre! Andre!
My mother came in from the kitchen, drying her hands to see what all of the shouting was about.
What is going on?
What's going on? I have an idealistic son who wants the world to be perfect. And he's waking up to the fact that it isn't. That's what's going on.
What happened?
The shopkeeper down the street refused to sell to him, calling him a filthy Jew.
What are you going to do about it?
Do about it? What do you mean?
If you don't stand up for your son, who will?
Gracia, whose side are you on? I'm just trying to make things right here. Can't you see how difficult that is with a son who has a hot head?
I'm not sure you want to know what I see, Diogo.
So what happened to Andre? And what did your father and mother do after this?
I will tell you more about Andre and my brother Manuel in a moment. Regarding my parents, they always loved each other, but the strain of finding our place, not only in London, but in the Jewish community, became increasingly contentious as my mother felt more and more alienated from Judaism. It turns out her fantasy did not quite match reality. Almost like it was yesterday, I remember the first morning we attended services at Beavis Marks Synagogue. When we entered, men were putting on prayer shawls and wrapping phylacteries around their arms and heads. It was all so foreign to me, and even more so to my mother. This is when David Machado, a man who was to become my first husband years later, introduced himself, and the kind woman, Abigail Mines, who had brought us clothing the day we arrived, was right behind him.
Dr. Nunes, I'm David Machado, the rabbi's assistant. He asked Abigail Minos and me to be your guides today.
Thank you. We are a bit bewildered, I guess. It's all so new.
It's understandable. If you men could follow me, and women, please follow Abigail. She will escort you upstairs to the balcony.
Women and men have to sit separately?
Yes, Abigail will do her best to explain everything to you.
I, my mother, aunt, and sisters followed Abigail up the stairs as David started handing out prayer shawls to the men.
You first hold it like this in your two hands. You see the prayer on the top edge here, in Hebrew. It reads, Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, Asher Kishanu Bemitzvotav Vitzivanu Lehit Atev Bitzitzi. It means, blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to wrap ourselves with tzitzit. Then you kiss each end of the prayer and wrap the shawl over your head like this.
Awkwardly, the men did their best to mimic him.
Very good. Now bring it to rest on your shoulders like this. Here's a prayer book for each of you. There are some seats over here. Follow me, and I show you how to daven, to pray.
When we women arrived in the balcony, Abigail handed each of us a small covering for our heads along with a prayer book.
I realize none of you read Hebrew, but I'll do my best to help you follow the service. Here, there's room for all of us to sit.
Nervously, we followed her and started to sit when she stopped us.
No. In this part of the service, we stand.
From then on, we watched Abigail out of the corner of our eyes for clues on when to stand and when to sit.
What are the men saying?
First, they are thanking God for giving us strength each morning and for not making us a slave or a non-Jew. And this last one, for not making them a woman.
I don't understand why men would want to be blessed by God for not making them a woman. What is wrong with being a woman?
Nothing at all. In fact, it's a blessing. We are entrusted to take care of the children and the household, whereas men have to come to the synagogue to pray each day. We are relieved of that responsibility so that men can fulfill it for us.
That makes no sense to me. It sounds like something a man would have devised.
Just accept it for now. You'll understand it soon enough. Now we can sit down.
This is what the women do? We don't participate in the prayers?
We pray, but in our own way. With time, as you learn Hebrew, you'll understand better.
I hope you're right.
Below us, the men were swaying rhythmically back and forth.
Why are they moving like that?
It's what we call davening. As men pray, their bodies are inspired to move.
But why?
It's hard to explain. Some believe it's the soul's desire to abandon the body and reunite itself with God. As you become more familiar with the prayers, you'll see.
At the time, the whole thing was quite a spectacle to us. Even the rabbi's sermon in English could just as well have been Hebrew. That's how little I understood. And with the closing prayer, the service was over. I have since learned that we Jews are commanded to welcome and love strangers, but my father told me later that was not necessarily the reality, as he overheard two men talking a few aisles away.
What do these conversos think they're doing, bringing a blackamoor slave into the synagogue?
Well, it's preposterous. I'll have a word with Rabbi Nieto. We can't have Negro servants here during prayers, much less wearing talit as though they're one of us.
Not only did my father hear what they said, painfully, Lucio Gama did as well. Until then, I never gave a second thought to the color of one's skin and what that had to do with religion.
Pay no attention to these men. They mean no harm.
If they mean no harm, why would they say such things?
They are ignorant fools. You have every right to be here. Maybe more of a right than I have. Ignore them, Lucio, please.
Diogo, it's hard to ignore when it's right in your face.
Just be patient. When they come to know you, they will accept you and love you as we do.
Perhaps.
Now, let's find the women. We have all been invited to lunch with the rabbi.
I think I'll pass. I don't have much of an appetite at this moment.
Lucio handed my father his prayer shawl, turned, and walked down the aisle to the synagogue door.
Lucio, please, come back. Lucio!
I don't think I've ever seen a Negro Jew. I know that Uncle Moses and Uncle Daniel owned slaves. Did that make the slaves Jewish?
No, being Jewish is as much as a heritage as it is a choice. And regarding Uncle Moses, I'm unsure that you knew that he was married to a mulatto woman named Rose. Her skin was as dark as Shem Noah's. So, Rose, if she were alive today, she would have been your great-aunt.
Was she Jewish?
I don't believe so. It simply wasn't something important for Moses.
What about Lucio Gama? If your parents adopted him as their son, would that make him my great-uncle?
I guess it would. What do you think of that?
I have a great-aunt and a great-uncle who are mulatto? My friends will never believe me. I don't recall ever meeting Lucio Gama. Is he still alive?
Unfortunately, no. But he led an interesting life, especially when we came to America. But once again, that's jumping ahead of the story. We'll get to the life of Lucio Gama, who became Shem Noah. But first, let me tell you about my father's first meeting with the rabbi and about his priest.
Your father had to be circumcised? Really? At his age?
Yes, that was his first feeling as well when he sat down with Rabbi Nieto to discuss what it would take to become Jews again.
Diogo, it's forgivable that your ancestors were forced to convert, but by the laws of Moses, your situation as Jewish descendants who have been forced to practice Catholicism presents a quandary for us, rabbis.
But we continued to be Catholics only to save our lives. If the Inquisition discovered us Judaizing, they would have killed us. Does that not count for anything?
Well, of course it does. I have no idea what it would have been like to have been in hiding like that, but you must understand it's not in my power to just wave my hand and declare you're immediately Jewish and no longer practicing Catholic.
Even though it was in secret, we did our best to keep Shabbat and celebrate the important festivals. Admittedly, we don't know most of the prayers, or Hebrew.
Knowing how to pray in Hebrew is only a small part of it. It's not even required, actually. It's more the spirit and practice of being Jewish. The rabbis call it accepting the yoke of the commandments.
What's to accept? We have disavowed Christianity and kept alive our Jewish identity, and we have done our best to keep kosher.
Those are important steps, but there's more, much more. You and your children will have to acknowledge the authority of the Torah in your lives, including the oral Torah and the many commandments it lays out. Keeping Shabbat and eating kosher are just two aspects of that commitment. There are 613 commandments in total. Perhaps the most relevant and pressing is that you must be circumcised.
Circumcised?
Yes.
At my age?
I'm afraid so. It was a covenant between Abraham and God. It says in the book of Genesis that every male child among you shall be circumcised.
But my sons and I are no longer children.
True, but in the eyes of the Torah, you are children of Abraham. There's no way around it if you want to be fully recognized as a Jew.
What about Lucio? He was circumcised as a child.
In such cases, there is a simple ritual. A small drop of blood is all that's required.
And with his dark skin, he will then be accepted in the synagogue?
Of course, he would then be a Jew. Why would you think otherwise?
Comments I heard yesterday from some of the congregants make me think otherwise.
Pay no attention to them.
Tell that to Lucio.
I will.
And if one of my boys or the young men who accompanied us choose not to be circumcised?
I hope you and your family don't have to cross that bridge. I am told it can be done without too much discomfort. You'll just have to convince them that it's worth it.
And what else of these 613 commandments do we need to know about?
Well, you can learn about them all in due time. There's an old saying, to eat an elephant, you do it one bite at a time. Although an elephant is not kosher and I would never consider eating one, I think you get the drift of my meaning.
Very well. And what else do I need to convey to my family?
Well, everything is not so overwhelming or negative. All of you will get to assume Hebrew names, and you and your wife and her sister and husband will be able to consecrate your marriages in the Jewish tradition, under the chuppah.
I think Gracia would like that.
Good. Once you get these things behind you, you and your sons can undertake a course of study to understand what it truly means to be observant. You can even learn the prayers in Hebrew. It's a lot to take in. I would be the first to admit it's not easy being a Jew. It takes time and commitment. To be frank, many conversos who come to me go part way down the path, find it too hard a road to travel, and quit.
I am not one who quits.
That's clear to me. But if you want to become undeniably Jewish, then these are the many things required of you, your sons, and your friends.
Very well. Let me discuss it with them, and I will let you know. But I can speak for myself. I haven't come this far to turn away from my faith.
And disgusted they did. I must say, not everyone was as enthusiastic as my father, starting with my brother Manuel and followed by my uncle Sebastian.
So, how painful will this circumcision be?
It will hurt considerably, but they will do some things to dull the pain. I expect we will all have recovered within a week or two.
That's all well and good, but frankly, I have a bigger concern. How will this affect my intimate relations with Teresa?
Medically, no serious effect as far as I know. According to the Torah, Jewish men have been circumcised for millennia and have no problem with copulation or having children. In the short term, you may be a little sensitive, but over the long term, you'll probably not even notice it.
And who will perform this circumcision?
I could, but I have never done the procedure. I think it would be better to have an experienced rabbi do it at the synagogue.
When would we do this?
Within the next few days.
And then we'll be accepted as Jews?
As the rabbi explained it, there is much more to being a Jew than I think any of us realized. Being circumcised is just the beginning. Then we must keep the Sabbath and eat only kosher foods. I don't think any of us will have a problem with that. However, I discovered that there are several hundred more commandments we must learn about and attempt to observe. You must all realize that undertaking this is a serious commitment, and you each need to decide what is right for you.
Hundreds of rules. What if we choose not to observe some of them?
I'm with Andre. Learning the catechism was more than I ever wanted to memorize. And what if we inadvertently break some of these rules? Do we confess to the rabbi?
In Judaism, there is no confessional like in the Catholic Church. This is strictly between you and God.
That I like. I never cared for confessing my sins to a stranger.
Nor did I. Then you'll be glad to know that many of these rules are impossible to observe, like handling sacrifices in the temple that was destroyed nearly 2,000 years ago, or how to make a fence on your roof. But we don't have a flat roof, so it doesn't apply. What is most important are the commandments about how we treat each other with love and respect. Isn't that the essence of the 10 Commandments? The most important thing is that we strive to observe them, knowing that our Jewish God is filled with forgiveness.
I have a feeling I will need a great deal of forgiveness.
Knowing you, Manuel, that may be true. But remember, if it's too much to honor and respect your father and mother, we can always return to the Catholic Church. I am sure they will be happy to welcome you and the rest of us back in Lisbon.
Very funny, Papa.
Any more questions?
After we get circumcised, then what?
You and I will honor our marriages to Gracia and Teresa in the Jewish tradition with Hebrew vows.
I like that.
And each of us will choose a Hebrew name to mark the beginning of our new life as Jews.
So that's how you went from being Maria to being Zipporah?
Yes, the rabbi suggested that name because I had such a free spirit, like a little bird.
And how did everyone else get their names?
They chose them. Manuel became Moses because he wanted to be brave enough to stand up against those who hate Jews. My brother Andre chose Daniel because he admired this prophet for remaining loyal to God despite persecution and danger. And as you have already learned, Andre certainly knew what it meant to be hated. My sister Teresa chose Esther, and Abrao, her husband-to-be, liked his name the way it was, so he stayed with the English translation, Abraham. My sister Isabel became Rachel, so her husband-to-be Rodrigo chose Jacob. Sebastian became Isaac because he loved to laugh. And as you already know, my father Diogo took the name Samuel, and my mother Gracia took the name Rebekah, which is the name I chose for your mother when she was born. My mother's sister, Teresa, took the name Abigail after Abigail Mainis, our new friend. That left Lucio Gama. My father said that Lucio had an enormous heart and was our source of comfort, so he became known as Noah, Shem Noah.
And the men? They all were circumcised?
Yes, indeed. They put a brave face on, although I suspect it was more painful than they let on.
Ouch!
Yes, it was a big ouch. But within a few days we were celebrating because now we could finally declare for all to see that we, at last, were free to be Jews in the eyes of God. Then we celebrated our parents after they were married under the huppah.
Mazel tov!
Mazel tov!
Mazel tov!
Mazel tov!
Mazel tov!
Mazel tov! I can't recall a more joyous time, even though there were many difficulties ahead and my parents were no strangers to sorrow. On the day of their wedding, we celebrated like never before. And it was at the celebratory meal afterward that we learned another piece of joyous news.
Your mother and I have one more blessing we want to share before we eat.
We didn't want to say anything until we were certain. It appears you will be getting a new sibling in the months ahead.
I'm not quite sure I'm following what you mean, Mamai.
What your mother is trying to say is she's pregnant. As best as we can guess, the baby is due in about 5 months.
You're pregnant? How is that possible?
Do you think just because your father and I are getting on in years, we still don't love each other?
Yes, but...
I have treated many women your mother's age who successfully had children. We just wanted all of you to know and to share in our joy.
We all should be pleased for mother and father.
Does this mean I'm going to have a little sister?
Yes, or perhaps a little brother.
What shall we name him?
Your father and I have decided on Aviv if it's a boy and Aviva if it's a girl. It means spring. This feels like a new beginning for us and hopefully the entire family.
Aviva, I'm going to have a little sister. The joy of that day was unfortunately stained with disappointment and tragedy. The sorrow and anger started with my brothers as they worked on a construction site hauling stones and dirt, but soon spread to nearly every family member.
Hey, what are these speakers? Pick up the pace. This ain't no bloody tea party.
That imbecile calls me a dick one more time.
Don't pay any attention to him. Remember, our family needs the money.
You don't need to remind me. When those sons of bitches at the synagogue said they'd help find us work, I never thought it meant I'd be digging ditches for some cretin.
I said, pick up the pace. What don't you idiots understand about that?
Face, father.
What did you say?
He says we're on it, boss. We're working as hard as we can.
Then work a little harder.
You got it, boss.
That son of a bitch can go to hell.
I heard that, you pricks. Get off my sight. You're fired. You hear me? I'll put out the word and you'll never get another job at a construction site. Now get out of here before I bust your loaf of bread open with a shovel.
This is the conclusion of Episode 5 of Flames of Freedom. Written by Richard Stone. Produced and directed by Mark Simon at Q-Tone Productions. Audio engineering, original music, and sound design by David Wilson. Executive producer Lance Toland. Special thanks to our ensemble cast. Zipporah, played by Angelina Santana. Benjamin, played by Jamie Tresalian. Diogo Nunez, played by Juan Pablo Gamboa. Gracia Nunez, played by Gabriela Lopetegui. Additional roles played by Brad Davidorf, Barry Stoltz, Francois Clemenceau, and Roxanne Rittman. Thanks to Rabbi Saul Rubin, whose assistance throughout the development of the series was invaluable, and for their guidance and support of this project from its early inception. Special thanks to Rabbi Robert Haas of Congregation Mikveh Israel in Savannah, Georgia. Rabbi Rachel Bregman of Temple Beth Tefillah in Brunswick, Georgia. Rabbi Shalom Morris of Beavis Marks Synagogue in London, England. And Lord Peter Levine of London City, England. And the Jewish Heritage Alliance for their support. This has been a production of Lance Toland Entertainment. Copyright 2024. All rights reserved. Flames of Freedom is a docudrama based on actual historical events. To learn more about this story, the actors, and the backstory of its production, join in on the conversation on Facebook at Flames of Freedom or at flamesoffreedom.net.